you have revelation, it's like I didn't ask. Oh, there we go, live streamed. So who are we actually live streaming it to? Like the
Well,
world?
last week you told me not to, so I didn't send a little message out to your peoples.
I wasn't here, like
Yeah.
literally Dave wasn't here last week anyway, but
But to
so
to anyone on live that checks into you, but I didn't put a notice out, so we'll see
morning,
who shows up
Shannon.
today.
So this,
Hi,
you can
Shannon.
watch this on YouTube now. Is that what you're saying? Like,
Right now, yeah. Usually I let people know, but I didn't this time.
but
So
do people on YouTube get a link so they can actually join in if they want to? So if they can,
yeah, yeah.
okay,
Anybody, the link is available.
all
Anybody
right.
that like kind of happens onto your channel right now will be able to see it. Oh, wait a minute, make sure. I want to make it public.
Yeah, make it public. Not
I
that
know,
it's about numbers or anything like that, but it's just I'm not
not at
very up
all.
with technology,
Not at all.
how
Not at
things
all.
go. So I just want to talk about, and I'm not going to say her name because she does want her anonymity respected. But someone who I've been online friends with for about 15 years last week had a full-blown revelation. And we've been meaning to like traverse the globe and meet up with each other. But she had this whole revelation thing went on that when you have revelation, like firstly, it's intensely personal, like it'll tell you in the course, revelation's intensely personal. It's difficult enough for you to make sense of it, right? Let alone accept that it's happened, unless you get a guided revelation, which most people do. But the ego, that part of your mind that's still trying to validate time and space, it always wants to hijack the revelation. So in the immediacy of the experience, that's as crisp and clear as you're ever going to be able to understand it. Trying to understand it in retrospect is virtually pointless because it's not the conscious mind, it's not the human mind that has the revelation particularly, although it is experienced in consciousness. But it does what it needs to do, whether you're aware of it or whether you're aware of all the ramifications of it or not. So, oh, Tina, are you with us?
I am, yes.
All right, cool.
Yes.
So you have the revelation, right? And a revelation is a non-physical experience. If you want to call that for lack of understanding or lack of or for context, an out-of-body experience, you can, but it's more of a no-body experience. It's like literally something beyond the world where you find yourself being addressed or being dealt with in a divine manner, which is always like incredible and amazing. But you can't really talk about it. It's like illumination of the mind. You can't really talk about that at all. You can sort of point at it and allude to things about it. But so anyway, this particular person's had this revelation. And then for the next few days, Shannon, you're going for a walk in the woods. She's got like a cabin in the woods there. Watch out for that guy with the axe. It's always one of them. Oh, look at that. You're like at the North Pole. Are you Mrs. Santa Claus? I think got a reindeer in your backyard. But anyway, so the illumination of the experience is intensely personal. And for the few days that follows after that, in general, it's not a set, there's no set rules or anything, right? But in general, the mind reels trying to make sense of it. Now, I want to say the old days, but it's still these days because the dissemination of the course isn't entirely global. In the old days, if you had a powerful enough revelation, and I know people that this has happened to, it can literally fry your circuits and you end up like in the mental health ward or something like that, being sedated or whatever, or else you're running around the streets naked saying, I've seen God, and like you just literally want to throw all your clothes off and like jump into the air. Eureka! And I'm wearing some clothes, but So this person's had a revelation, and a very good one, like I would say a very good one. It's like some of them that happen, they're just like in the beginning when you start doing the course, it's more like you have moments of phenomena. And I wouldn't really call that a revelation, but I mean, you kind of can, because it's relative to the particulars of your transformative process. And it usually always makes sense of it. But usually it's just like, oh, something appeared or disappeared, or I was walking along the street and this person just vanished in front of me. I don't know what to make of that. And you can't really relate to it because your mind hasn't really integrated all the particulars of its curriculum yet. But once you've really got the curriculum down pat, and your mind can just pull out of a hat any particular reference, right, which is what happens in this. If I was to give you a line from the Course in Miracles and a line from the Bhagavad Gita, you would know which one is which, right? Easily. You'd say, oh, that's from the Course in Miracles, blah, blah, blah. When you have a full-on revelation, it tends to make sense of where you're at in your own process and give you some kind of an indication as to what you're about now, or what your process is, or your ministry is about, or it's something like that, right? It's not just like some random thing you can't make use of. Otherwise, what's the point? Right? So my friend had a revelation, and she was literally with Jesus. And I've had a few people, and I had the same thing about 3 days after her. So she was literally with Jesus, who explained a whole bunch of stuff to her, which is incredibly helpful, right? She didn't need to try and work out anything or put it all together or make sense of whatever. It was like the man himself, like literally pulled her aside and went, hey, this is what's happening, blah, 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 blah. And she's been on this kind of high ever since, as you can imagine you would be, right? So we've been having a bit of back and forth through the week and everything, and now it seems to be sort of settling. Like it's been a week now, and it's in the memory of it rather than in the revelation of it. And and that's not what I want to talk about this because of. I want to talk about this because of the recognition of truth in your brother, right? So there's a part in the course where Jesus talks about certain contacts have been set in your dream, in your experience, in your walking of the dream. There are certain people that you will come into contact with. It's unavoidable, right? I sometimes joke about different people in the dream as being like the clipboard people. You know, you sort of see them sometimes, and it's like they're ticking off. You know, it's like Tom could be a clipboard person. He's just sort of showed up, and he's like secretly from up there, and he's sort of like ticking off the yep, good, and then like I don't know what the hell, you know, but it's funny, you know, you have these moments, and you feel like you're being checked up on, or you feel like you're being tested, right? And so about 3 days after she had a revelation, I had a lucid dream. I won't call it a revelation. I won't call it anything particular, because I really don't. It was different from any kind of communication I've ever had. Usually communication to me happens in a moment of light experience, and there's just this kind of an aha moment that follows it. It's like there are no need for words. It's like whatever is transmitted through the light is helpful here on earth as well. Right. So, but this particular dream, I think it's called a lucid dream, where you're awake in your dream and you know what's going on, and you can actually choose to do things, and it happens, right? And I've only ever had one dream that I can recall like that before, and it was just for a second. And as soon as I realized I was conscious within the dream, it kind of finished. This one, however, I was conscious within the dream, and everything was white. It was like a different level of experience. Like all the people were white, the sky was white, everything was white. There was no color, no black, no nothing, just white, perfect white. Like the White Cliffs of Dover is the only. Where's Barry's not here? The only reference I have, this chalky sort of whiteness. And there was Jesus, like it was in this building. There was Jesus sitting on a barrel or sitting on a stump or something. And there was all the disciples are around. And I was tested, right? And this like goes to the clipboard carriers. I was tested. I was put into this kind of, I don't know if you know, like when you join the army and they have one of those obstacle courses and you have to get over all the things. I've never joined the army, by the way, not in this incarnation. But there was a series of things I had to do. And Jesus was sort of sitting there going, I want you to go over there and just stand in that framework there. And I was standing there and this whole sort of gelatinous thing, I don't know what you call it. It was like a box, like I was being boxed up, came and my head was sticking out the top. And I'm like, like in this thing. And then it sort of all tightened up around me like this. And then it sort of all pulled apart again. And then I went to the next thing and the next thing. And that was the only one that I can clearly remember. It was kind of a weird feeling, like almost nauseous. And then I was allowed to go. When I left, I was flying, like my physical form was flying. And it was as if there's a bit in the course where he says, you know, like you'll still see your body. When you lay it aside, you'll still see it in your experience for a while because the shock would be too much for you to encompass going straight from the physical realm to the next, whatever comes next. And it felt a lot like that. I don't know. I'm just trying to clutch at straws, which is what the mind does when you have any kind of Jesus thing goes on. But the power of it, right? I recognize Jesus in there. I have no clue really what was going on in there, but the recognition of the truth, right, that came through from that experience. When I saw Jesus sitting there, I knew it was Jesus. It wasn't just some guy with a beard or whatever. And like Jesus has appeared to me twice before in the last 30 years. Neither of those two times in a physical form. It was always as a pillar of light, like just this obelisk of incredible, brilliant golden light just radiating, which I also knew was Jesus. This one had form, but I knew it was Jesus. And when I woke up from the dream, I was absolutely shell-shocked. I couldn't stop laughing for about an hour, and the laughing wasn't me laughing at anything. It was just the laughter coming up, bubbling up as it does. And I'm laughing. I had to go to work. I'd get on my motorcycle and I was riding all the way into town, just laughing my head off. And I thought maybe I should just go home and have the day at home today. But there was a recognition of the truth, right? So when you have this, let's talk about it as when I have my journey and there are people preordained meetings with people that you're going to have, you recognize them, right? It's beyond any ability for you to be able to go, oh, yeah, I'm drawn or attracted to that person, whatever, but I won't say anything. Or you do, pardon me, hiccups. You do say something. You find yourself just acting out of impulse and you're just like, I have to make this connection. And those who are meant to meet will meet, right? It doesn't matter how much you want to resist it. Even if you're a very insulated person, introverted person, whatever, if you see somebody across the street and you recognize the truth in them, you will cross the street. You'll go across the street and you'll be like, this is weird, but I have to talk to you or whatever. And you'll make those connections and you'll just find yourself doing it. It tends to go against the grain of free will because you feel like you have no choice. It's like, I have to talk. It's the weirdest kind of thing. All right. So I had a moment with my friend and we were talking about how we met. And we decided that she and I, because I recognized her instantly as being one of my contacts. I don't know, it was 15 years ago now, so I don't know how the recognition came about. And she also recognized me, like we just had this thing. And this is online. Like I'm always ever surprised how efficient online seems to be, but I mean, it's all just mind anyway. So, but you know, things always seem more intimate and more personal in the physical proximity of each other, but online we recognized each other. There was something in me that either made me reach out to her or vice versa. And we've been together as a teaching learning relationship for 15 years. We've had this big lull in the middle where, and I remember it making a decision or a realization in my own thinking that she doesn't need me now. She's good. Right. And her brother was also along the lines of that, but he's sort of drifted off, the seeds on the wayside a bit, but still doing his thing. But she's been very prominent throughout. But there's been this big lull when I realized that there wasn't really anything more that I could offer at that point. I kind of came apart from her. But in recent 6 months or so, we've sort of gotten back together and things have been going on for her. And there's been this recognition of this building up of stuff, and Ted used to talk about it as there's an orchestration that goes on. So you have an intense period of learning, let's say, or study, and then you kind of enter into this moment where you realize that the study's kind of done and you don't know what else to do. So you just be about your own whatever. And then bit by bit, you tend to start applying the principles, right? Because that's the whole purpose of why you're studying. So you start applying the principles and you start to go through these little shifts and changes and healing moments and releases and all this sort of stuff. And whether you're aware of it or not, it's preparing you for revelation. It's preparing you for the experience that Jesus is telling you need to have, which becomes then a focal point for all your thinking, a focal point for your mind, like a waypoint. So we were talking about this attraction, how like recognizes like, and how the people that you're meant to meet. And I want to play this for you, Tina, because I know you'll laugh the hell out of it, and maybe Bernadette and whatever, but she sent me a clip this morning. I'll see if I can, it's on my phone. She sent me a little voice clip. And it probably sounds very egotistical to want to play it, but we're in the domain of ego here, so let's just be about the thing. Tell me if this comes up clearly, if you can hear it. I'll just turn the volume.
We're on live too.
Oh yeah, good.
Okay. All right.
I remember it was like
can you hear that?
Or I don't remember like exactly when we started talking, but I do remember that something about you felt just like, yes, this I knew. And there was something about you, but the same time, me and Jocke, my brother, we went to this retreat with David, I don't know, David Hoffman. No, David, I don't know. I don't even remember his name. And my feeling was like, I looked at Jocke and I was like, no, he's a phony. He's a fake. And I wish I never laid my eyes on him. Because that's a line from Grease, the movie. He's a phony, he's a fake, and I wish I never laid my eyes on him. And because I woke up at the retreat and I had this crazy dream, so I woke up laughing. And I was like laughing, and Jocke started laughing, and they hushed me like, shh, stop laughing. We want silence here. And that's when I felt like, what the hell am I doing here? If laughter is like shut down like that, I don't want to be here. So that was like in the beginning. That was maybe 15, 16 years ago. And then I felt like the contrast between you and him, even though it's like we're all the same, but the contrast between you made me made me see the real one.
You're a real one.
But it's funny, you know, like right in the end, the contrast made her see. And it's like, how could it possibly be the contrast that made her see? Right? Because there is no contrast between what's an illusion and what's still an illusion. It's all the one thing. What made her see was something inside of her reacted to the truth. Something inside of her knew. And I've had people tell me that same thing many times. The idea of those connections, they're opportunities, you know, they're I think Jesus refers to them as out of sequence time intervals, where you just be going along and like day to day, normal shit going on. Then all of a sudden someone will just come into your peripheral view or something. And it's a big snap, you know, like a big kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? And we had, and this lends towards being vigilant, you know, but we had a couple of backpackers here just recently, French people staying. Joe, I think, met them, and they were a lovely couple. And I recognized something in her that was desperate, I guess, or searching, probably the better word, you know, like, and even she wasn't really aware of it. And I gave her a copy of Jonathan Livingston's Seagull. And when she read that book, she almost burst into tears. When I asked her, have you read that book? And she goes, I did. And she had this huge moment of just telling me how incredible it was and everything like that. And I remember those moments. You know, I remember reading Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, and it didn't really have any profound effect on me until a few books after that I read. And then I started to slowly wake up from this kind of malaise that my life was encumbered by, realizing that the message of Jonathan Livingston Seagull was helping me to recognize the truth, helping me to realize what was actually the nature of my life rather than just the physical particulars of it that seemed to be going on. And from that point, you know, you start to get those little, it's like jump starting a car. You give it a little bit extra charge and boom, everything comes to life. So having those moments of recognition of the truth, it's like I'm looking for the truth within myself. Initially, I'm going to see it outside of myself in other people, situations and events, which is why people travel to India and go and sit in ashrams and whatever, because they're looking for something. They don't yet realize there's this kind of, and even if you were to say, look, what you're looking for is within you, it wouldn't have any credence. It wouldn't make any sense particularly. You'd be like, oh yeah, I know that what I'm looking for is within me, but you'd still go to India anyway, because you never really connect with what you're saying, what you're doing, what you're feeling. There's always this sort of like partial connection where what you say and what you do are out of alignment, right? I think it's in Krishna consciousness, they have a line in the Gitas there somewhere that like it's when what you think and what you say and what you do are all in alignment, there's no further you can go on earth, right? That's as far as you can get, which is true. And you're lining up to the truth within you. The more you line up to it, the more you take it on board, the more you become willing to accept that there's something else going on in the fashion of the greater good, the more you begin to just naturally tune in, right? Your mind naturally knows the direction of its maturation, spiritual maturation. Naturally, it's only you, the ego you, let's talk about it as the Dave or the Tina or the Fran or whatever, that sits there trying to work out what all these words mean, right? And it does that because it's the very thing that gave the words the meaning in the first place, right? And so it thinks that the truth can be found through understanding the meaning of what things mean in relation to its ignorance, and it can't. Okay, which is why very early on in the workbook, Jesus emphasizes again and again and again, my thoughts don't mean anything, right? There's this internal knowing. It's like with the contacts and the people that you're to meet, there's an internal knowing that doesn't need words. And in fact, the words would end up being the denial of that knowing, because that's what they're structured for anyway. So there's this kind of feeling, and that's why in our Zoom meetings, like I'm always so pushy, like when we do our meditative parts, to try and get in touch with feeling something, even if it's pain, even if it's awful. You know, it's like, I would rather have you leave the meeting completely devastated or completely joyous, but as long as it's not the same way that you came in, because change is the nature of what we're about here. I don't care if that's changed this way or that way, as long as it's change. You know? Because that change is a breaking free, if you like, from what it is that you would have your life be structured as. It's sort of like all the apples have to get tipped out of your cart, and you're going to try and put them all back in, right? Because you still think that you have a job to do in the world, and that you're a person in the world, and there's things that needs to go on, you've got to accomplish, and kids to feed, and bills to pay, and shit in the streets that you've got to get an app for, and, you know, all this sort of stuff. But the truth of the matter is you don't. You don't have to restructure and rebuild anything at all. And when you have a moment of revelation, what happens is it totally dislodges you. It totally dislodges you from everything you think, the whole lot. The mind training of the course, once you master it, teaches you essentially, don't try to readjust. Don't try to represent yourself on earth. Right? Don't try to rebuild the identity. You're going to, but like, just give it a moment. You know, like, allow whatever that is to happen, and don't try to get yourself back together, because it can feel a lot like you're losing your mind. Right? When you have a moment of revelation, without the framework of support that your mind training has brought to you about not adjusting, about allowing all things to be perfection and everything like that, it can feel like you're starting to slip, and that your grasp on reality, as you even think reality is coming undone. I think that's the word. My whole mind is coming undone. Right? Seen rightly, that's a good thing. But you have to trust the process. You've got to trust Jesus, that he's in charge and you're not in charge. You're just along for the ride, and you do these little bits here and you do these little bits there, and you apply forgiveness here and forgiveness there. And before you know it, boom, shanka, there's a revelation. And now what do you do with it? Right? That's it. The mind goes immediately. Now what do you do with it? I just had a revelation. Right? Well, you don't do anything with it. It's already in the past the moment you've had it. And it's intensely personal. Whatever it's meant to be to you will be to you. Right? Usually you'll find, and it's the same with these moments of recognition where you realize somebody and you just got to make that connection, and you find yourself doing something totally against the grain of your normal behavior. Those moments of connection, if you don't pollute them with the normal old blah, blah, 24/7 chit chat and thing, and just leave them as moments where, look, I don't know why I have to connect with you, but I have to connect with you. Right? I'm on a journey, whatever, and for some reason I feel drawn to you, and then just leave it open as much as possible and allow whatever's presented in that to come forth. You know, there's this increasing awareness of how unhelpful it is to be continually in the examination of things, when the whole purpose of your mind training is teaching you to become miracle-minded about things. Right? You can't examine a miracle. And when you begin to see that your whole life is a miracle, when you begin to see that everything that goes on throughout the day is miraculous, actually, then you learn to trust that more. You learn to fall into it with grace and just sort of abide with it. And the need to examine it and prod at it and try to work out what that means to you tends to fall away. You just find yourself living in the benefit and the receipt of that miraculous state of mind, which is peacefulness and joy and happiness. I was talking with somebody last night at God knows what ridiculous hour, 1 a.m. or something. I went to bed at like 8 and I'm up again at 1. And I'm talking with another person about just the joy of life. You know, just the joy. And it's when we're in our Zoom meetings, it's like, it's not particularly joyous. We're here for the work. We're here to do the mind training and the confrontations, and we're here to push our buttons and like bring up all the shit, right? We're here for the healing. In the healing, there's not particularly that great deal of joy other than the realization of the fact that, well, I'm in my process at least. You know, at least I'm making an effort. So that let's be joyous about that, because there's always a reason to be grateful, and from gratitude comes joy. But when you get on the other side of things, it's all just joyous. It doesn't have to look like a big brass band and balloons and people releasing birds and stuff like that to have that moment of joy that we tend to associate within our own human references as being like joyous moments in our childhood, or joyous moments, I got married and that was such a joyous day. And we tend to want to plot references. And if our ideas and experiences of joy in our mundane lives don't match up to those, we wonder, where the hell has joy gone? Why aren't I joyous like I was at my wedding all the time? You know? And it's like, well, literally I could be if I wasn't in the constant examination of it. Right? It's that simple. If I wasn't constantly examining what I thought joy was compared to other experiences of joy or other things, I would simply be in that because my mind is automatically and naturally attuned to its creative reality. It's like the corruption of miracle impulses. It's exactly the same thing. It all boils down to being one thing. It's like every time anything happens, every time I get a sense of feeling good about myself for any reason whatsoever, my ego is always going to want to jump in and try to define why I'm feeling good and what I should do with that feeling. And it'll turn a miracle-minded impulse into a sexual impulse or something like that. And it takes a great deal of determination to want to try and override that and go, hang on a minute. I see that I'm feeling a certain thing here that's making me want to act a certain way. Let me just refer that to the Holy Spirit. Because Jesus is telling, and I'll use sexual impulse for a moment, but Jesus is telling me that the only use for sex is procreation of the stock. Right now, do I really want to have more kids? No. Well, then what's this impulse? Why am I entertaining this as something for sex? It could only be because I'm trying to validate the body, right? The pleasure of the body. And in that, it can be released, and the truth of what that impulse actually is can come forth, and you'll find yourself feeling driven or feeling guided or feeling compelled to cross the street and talk to somebody and say, hey, look, I have this whole thing going on. I don't know what it is, but I've got to connect with you, right? Because the whole reason for those impulses is about the mind training and the healing, which happens through relationships. And you'll find that those relationships are connections that you're going to make along the way, right? If you don't check it at the door, if you don't check those inappropriate or misguided miracle impulses at the door, you're going to cross the street and think that there's an opportunity for you to get laid, you know, and miss the whole reason for for the whole encounter altogether. You know, and you have many of those things, especially when you're new to mind training. You'll have many moments where you realize, damn it, I missed that opportunity in retrospect, which that's not a bad thing. I mean, it just makes you more vigilant for next time you feel a certain way about something. It's like, wow, I really felt prompted today to meet this person or say something to this person. Let me not try to interpret why. Let me just let it be miraculous. And then allow that to be so. Allow it to be miraculous. Because the miracle can look like anything. Right? It doesn't have to look like a voice from the sky or illuminate light around all sorts of objects or people or things like that. It can just be this moment where you had a feeling about something and followed it, like that day with the girl in the sand dunes. And I'm sure you guys all remember that story. So I had no clue why. I just felt a certain thing and had to do it. I just had to do it. Right? And that's going to be the nature of the experience that you guys have outside of, and I'm going to put it to you this way, outside of your comfort zones, when you're willing to say yes and to step up and to take on more, right? It's like your mind training proceeds in accordance to your willingness to continue to say yes to it. Right? If you're fearful of making an advance or fearful of a shift or a change, that's understandable, but it's not going to be helpful to you in being able to present a greater view or a greater picture of Christ's vision or the nature of reality. Right? There's always got to be this, and was it Aurobindo that would always encourage his students to make bold experiments with their spirituality, to put themselves out, to take themselves into situations where they felt deliberately, where they felt uncomfortable and like a fish out of water. You know, for me, that would be having to put on a tuxedo and go to some kind of formal event like that. I would be totally out of water there. But luckily where I live, there is no tuxedo class events. Like I would just live in a little country town, or big country town really, but so being aware of the connection and reacting to the connection or responding to the connection as it's meant to, you know, for what it's for. It takes a great deal of mind training. There's a level of maturity that you carry with you when you go out in the world, out and about. I mean, imagine the disciples when Jesus sent them out, if they'd have gone to, you know, the pubs and the clubs as Jesus did, and to talk to the down and out and the poor and whatever, and they just ended up getting caught up in drinking games. You know, it's like in the early parts where Jesus would send out disciples and none of them came back. They were all corrupted by the world and all got distracted and whatever. And then eventually his 12 would go out, and in the main, they were quite successful in carrying out their ministries and out demons in his name and all that sort of stuff, as it, you know, in the New Testament. But you've got to remember your purpose wherever you go. When you remember your purpose and when you're consciously carrying your purpose with you, I'm here to represent him who sent me, then stuff happens. If you're just out in the world, like doing Course in Miracles stuff online and reading in the lessons and whatever, and then you go out and you're completely oblivious to why you're really out there, nothing's going to happen, or it will happen, but you'll miss it. Right? The opportunities to be happy will be missed. The opportunities to increase your joy will be missed because the mind's not focused on its true purpose. And that's generally always the case in the beginning until you realize how valuable this teaching is to you. It's like, holy crap, I really need this teaching, because like a whole day went by and I forgot to do my lesson. I haven't done my lesson all day long, even though Jesus tells me do it once an hour for the whole day, you know, 5 minutes on the hour and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, I didn't do my lesson at all today. And you start to realize how vacant, how undisciplined the mind is, right? How dumbed down it's become by listening to the voice that speaks for time and space, speaks for the body, speaks for temporal accomplishment, rather than for the divine nature of the truth of your own being. It's like, holy fuck, I'm not even conscious. I walk around all day completely oblivious. I know this. I know the truth of my reality. I know that I have a higher purpose here, but yet do I represent it when I go out, or do I represent myself? It's like, no, I'm always representing myself. It's like, God damn it. missed it again. But those moments of realizing you've missed it again is just as valuable as not missing it again, because now you can ask for help. It's like I went to the market today. There was someone there I was completely drawn to. I knew I had to go and talk to them, and I didn't do it. Right? And I know you guys have all had moments like that. It's like I didn't just take a chance on it. I didn't step up. I didn't remember that I had a higher purpose. I let the moment pass. I let that opportunity go. And then you kick yourself in the pants all the way home about it. It's like, damn it, why didn't I say something? It's as simple as that. Those moments are as simple as that. Why didn't I break the ice? Why should the other person have to come and say something to me? It's like the Holy Spirit uses me as well as the other person, as well as, like the whole thing's one conglomerate kind of energetic happening. I have these moments that occur throughout the day, and it's like even in my little studio now when I'm at work, and someone will say something, or there'll be a situation that occurs, and there's a realization of an opportunity to accept atonement, which is that's my sole responsibility. I'm going to accept atonement for this situation. What that looks like after accepting atonement, I don't know. It's like, yes, I'm responsible for this, which is the atonement principle. I am responsible, right? I'm the dreamer of my dream. Everything that occurs out in the world that I react to is the particulars of my own healing process. If I'm reacting to it, it's because somewhere in my mind, whether I'm willing to accept it or not, I've already made it real to me. I've already given it a value. That's why I react. If I hadn't already given it a value, I wouldn't react at all. It'd be just something that's not really in my thing. It's not in my periphery. And some guys, you can look at the same situation, two people, one person might feel a certain way about it, and the other person will be like, I don't know what you're reacting to, like, I don't know. It doesn't. It's because you've given it a meaning. It has an association in you. And when you accept atonement for yourself in that, it's like, I'm responsible for this. This is just my mind, right? Then the healing can occur. I'm not separate from this person, this situation, this event, whatever it is. Once there is that admission of responsibility, healing occurs. It cannot occur without the admission of total responsibility, because there is still a defense in place. There is still an idea of separation in place that puts me separate somehow from somebody else or the thing that seems to be going on. I become the observer of the situation rather than the one who's responsible for it. Right? When I take responsibility for it, the healing can happen. And then whatever it is that healing is to look like, however that transpires in that moment or doesn't transpire in that moment, can occur through me or for me. Right? I never want to try and predict how I think the healing is going to look based on how past healings might have looked, even though a lot of the times they're very much the same. When we do our light sessions up here, or when we used to do our light sessions up here in the room up there, it was very much the same kind of thing all the time. But you would have moments where the particulars of the process of healing would look different from person to person, and you'd have some people puking on the rug and other people laughing, and like the range of experience through that release, through the healing, was quite vast. But at the end of the day, it's all just healing. The recognition of it, the recognition of those connections to be made, is at the behest of the Holy Spirit. Right? So it's not me that recognizes anything. It's not the Dave that recognizes anything. It's the Dave that has invited the Holy Spirit in to abide with him. I've invited the Holy Spirit in as this seemingly make-believe character, being told that I'm something other than this, and that I'm not this body, not this association of thought form ideas and stuff like that. And that I'm told if I include in this other kind of code, let's look at it as a code. If I include in this other kind of code whose references I'm never going to be able to understand because they don't hail from here, they're non-linear, they're taken on faith, then something else can begin to occur in me. That's the nature of miracle-mindedness. But I can't be miracle-minded one day and not miracle-minded the next. There has to be this continuity, which is why mind training is the most important thing that's going on the planet at the moment. I'm training my mind to be vigilant for the kingdom of heaven within myself and within my brothers. Whatever I react to out there, whatever seems to have a value to me out there in the world, is simply grist for the mill. It's the subject matter for my own personal atonement, for my own forgiveness. It's not about fixing someone else or changing someone else or getting someone else to see things my way. It's a little different in these Zoom meetings, right? When you have Zoom meetings, and you guys will find this out for yourselves, when you have your own particular students and whatever, and Kev, I know you used to do some online. Do you still do online stuff? Do you still have things? In bed with Kev, Annie was telling me the other day, in bed with Kevin or something, which he's always in bed. It's very, very appropriate. I like the thing. You'll realize in some of those situations, you know, where Jesus talks about it as the whole purpose of relationships is to bring that teaching, learning equilibrium into a balance, into harmony, so that it becomes perfect and becomes holy, so that the nature of the teaching, learning relationship itself is no longer required. And you'll realize that beyond the process of your own personal atonement with the relationship, there will be things that the teaching, learning relationship brings up in you that triggers you and activates you and you react to, and you'll realize, oh, I've still got my work to do in this as well, even though Jesus says there are those, some who have more to teach and some who have more to learn, or something like that, more to teach than to learn. But eventually that teaching, learning equilibrium reaches its maximum potential. So within the framework of the relationship, you're going to have opportunities to learn as well as to teach. If you're talking, let's say, to someone who's never heard of A Course in Miracles, never read any spiritual whatever, in general, perhaps you're going to be one of the people that has more to teach than to learn, but never preempt it. Right, the first rule of war in the Book of War by whoever wrote that. Whatever, but the first rule of war is never underestimate your opponent. And the ego always wants to see the other person in a relationship as an opponent rather than as an equal. Right? Whether that opponency is a higher level of opponency, or you're punching above your weight or below your weight, doesn't really matter. But the purpose of the relationship is to bring an equality to it. Right? But you cannot not go into a relationship without an already predetermined inequality in place. Otherwise, there would be no need for the relationship at all. You get that? Does that make sense? There's no mistakes. If you meet someone, you're meant to meet them because there is an inequality in my own thinking, let's say, about the relationship. I might see myself as someone who knows more about something compared to someone who probably knows less about something. And the nature of the relationship itself brings us to the realization that it doesn't matter the hell what we think we know or don't know. It's not the truth. The truth is true and nothing else is true. So you go through this whole ego process of shedding the ego, let's say, or dying to your own ego, where you get through all of these corrupted versions of yourself, and the ego loves the spiritual version. This is where did you post up that little thing with the wacky stick? You did? All right. So the Chan Master. I didn't know they were called Chan Masters. That's really quite a lovely name.
I have that stick.
You do? Yeah.
in my
I
yoga
remember,
class, yeah. At the Zen
right.
temple.
Yeah, I remember going to the monastery at Nan Tien down near Wollongong. They have a big 8-tier stupa there, and like there's about 4 or 5 different meditation halls, and it's the biggest Buddhist temple in the Southern Hemisphere. And I remember seeing the stick just inside the door, and I wanted to steal it just for a little just for a little icon. I thought, oh man, would they let me take it? But I lost track now. What I got sidetracked. So, but it's the whole process. It's like the whole process of, if I pick up A Course in Miracles for the first time, all of a sudden it feels as if I've been lifted up and out of my human kind of need to participate in the way I've always been participating, right? But the process of transformation, I'm still actually doing that. It's just couched differently. It's just expressed differently in spiritual terms and concepts, but I'm still playing out my corrupted mind through a process of healing rather than a process of further corruption. So what I made in error for myself actually gets used for my own benefit. But it doesn't mean that just because I pick up A Course in Miracles or the Gitas or anything like that, that all of a sudden I'm transformed, right? I'll still have my ugly, and I want to call it ugly because it's a great way to talk about it, my ugly mind, right? Jesus talks about it as pathetic, your pathetic thinking. I still have my pathetic and ugly views on life, the universe, and everything. And the ego, of course, likes to take on board the idea of sort of like polishing those and becoming better than other people, because look at me, I'm spiritual and you're just a pleb, you're just nobody. Of course, not realizing that that's still comparison, and that you're not spiritual at all in the terms of being better than anyone, because there's no such thing. That person literally is me. So that little analogy of the Chan master, I had somebody, and I did a response video. It's the first time I've ever done it. Oh, you know that one? Right. So I was talking about my enlightenment, right, which 1997, you guys probably all know it. And somebody left a comment saying, who is it that says I'm enlightened? It's like, oh my God, one of these bloody Zen kind of things. And I thought I could sit here and 2-finger type and try to like put out something that may or may not be taken on board as helpful. It'll probably, more than anything, just conjure up another Zen response or whatever. And I'm thinking, no, I won't do that. But then it was helpful. I thought, no, this will be helpful, because it is one of those rites of passage, or one of those ring pass knots that the mind goes through in its maturation as it realizes, right? And it's always in a reflection, as it realizes what it's actually doing. Because the temptation is to think that just because I've found a bunch of spiritual crap in a book, that this is all it is. But the whole point of the spiritual crap that you find in the book is to get beyond even that. Right? It's like, what's the point of a doctor staying in college for his whole life? Eventually, you've got to get out and practice medicine. You've got to get past the need for books, past the need for lectures, past the need for talking to your professor of medicine and whatever, and you hang the plaque on your wall and you begin your trade as a doctor. So dealing with the concepts, dealing with all those, and this is a thing that they do in Buddhism, in Mahayana, whatever it is the one, Mahayana Buddhism. So the novice monks will be constantly engaged in battling each other. It's the only way I can talk about it. They pair off, and one of the classes that they do is to battle each other with the concepts. One of them, it's like, this is a Zen one that everybody knows, but if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? And they'll battle each other about these, why it does or why it doesn't, and use the teachings of Buddha to try and arrive at the correct answer, which of course there is no correct answer. Right? Obviously, the tree makes no noise, but in the process of arriving at that point, the the novice monks go through all kinds of ins and outs with their own understandings with the concepts, and it helps them to sort of sharpen themselves. But it doesn't actually take you beyond particularly the nature where you realize that even all of those Zen does, but all of those concepts are not helpful. So in the idea of the wacky stick, or the bow, I think it's called the bow, traditionally when you meditate, the master will come around the class, and Jesus talks about it in the course, like when you're meditating properly, or when you're listening properly within, you become completely unaware of the body. Right? The body pales to nothingness. You're not even aware of your surroundings outside. There could be a fucking car crash outside your front door. You wouldn't hear it, right? You're totally zoned in on your internal diorama. So with the novice monks, the little wacky stick, the master would wander around, and every now and again, whenever he was prompted, he would like soundly belt you with this stick, like not just a little bit. You would get a lash across your back generally. And if you felt the sting of it, right, if you've ever been stung by a bee, it lasts for like 10 minutes or something, you would have this whack of the stick, and you would focus on the whack of the stick then, and the pain or the sting of that stick as the focal point for your meditation to get beyond that moment of pain. And that would take you directly into that experience of the singular diorama of your internal realm, right? It's the same thing. If people go into the rainforest and whatever to practice meditation into quiet places, but if you were to go and sit by a highway, if you were to sit in a noisy place, you would use the noise as the push for going deeper and deeper and more focus in your meditation until finally you didn't hear the noise. Right? That's when you're actually making progress. That's when you're transcending or traversing the difference between the outside world and the inside world. Firstly, there's like that recognition, like Alan Watts is famous, the outside and the inside come together. But so the wacky stick is an incredibly useful tool. In the Course in Miracles, we use our own pain as that same thing, as that same idea of the wacky stick. It's like, don't forget what it is that brought you here. Otherwise, you're going to fall back into the malaise of forgetting, and the opportunities to learn and the idea of having relationships with other people, whether superficial or intimate or whatever, is going to be missed. Right? Which is why people who've always been on, let's say, a really hard course of drugs or had a really horrific military experience or whatever, and they've been right to the bottom, they've been to that darkest of dark places, they always have more impetus to want to apply the principles of healing. Like they've just got, it's like, holy fuck, man, I've come from the darkest of the dark. There's no way I'm going back there. I'm doing this. And they mean it, and they really push the gauntlet, right? They really, really push it. And Brother Dean, did Dean show up last week in the meeting? No, I know he was there the week before, but Brother Dean's a classic example of that. Like as far as mind training goes, in a very short period of time, he has just rocketed past students I know that have been doing this for decades. His mind is opening and everything, because he's come from such a horrific background, such a horrible, ugly background, mental health and the death of nearly everybody in his family, and just like everything falling away, like collapsing and suicide attempts and the whole thing. It's like, but healing need not be like that, right? But it is important that you practice the mind training, and it's important that you remember when you step out your front door, when you turn off this Zoom meeting, that you actually still have a purpose. Your purpose is not to attend the Zoom meeting. That's included. But your purpose is to remember that God goes with me everywhere I go. And in this world, that has purpose through the atonement. Right? The atonement is literally purposeful. When I go to my club, when I go to my workplace. Why am I there? To represent myself or to represent him who sent me? You know, do I feel it's appropriate to represent him who sent me at my golf club or at my workplace, at the board meeting or at the whatever? It's like, hang on a minute. What am I defending? You know, if I get booted out of my club or lose my job because I suddenly stand up to represent truth in a situation that seems to compromise that to me, and I get kicked out or I get the sack or I get whatever, it's like, well, that's what's meant to happen. And I have to trust that. Am I willing to put that much faith in Jesus? And that's where it comes down to. It literally comes down to the everyday nitty-gritty of life. Miracle-mindedness has to be across the board or not at all. I either have total faith in God to take care of me, or I don't have any. That's why a big part of the mind training is seeking out those hidden agendas, seeking out those dark places that I still want to keep separate from healing because I think I can somehow still manage it. And all I end up doing is telling myself a bunch of bullshit stories and trying to pretend that I'm not feeling any pain about it. The whole nature of the human experience is pain. Life is pain, says the Buddha. Like, it's a realm of death. You got to try and get that, like really get that on board. This is a place where all things come to die. Now, within that, it doesn't matter what I do. Doesn't matter how much of a brave face I put on. That's what I came here for. That's what's happening. Until I change my mind about it and change my mind totally. Right? Jesus says it takes just a little bit of willingness. But that willingness has to go with me everywhere I go. It doesn't matter if it's only a little bit. At least I'm willing. Here I am, Lord. I feel completely out of place in here, but I'm willing. If it is thy will, use me here. And then whatever occurs, occurs. And man, you'll be surprised what happens. You will be so surprised what happens. The day I left, I walked out on my house. I just let the bank take it and left my job, left all my possessions, left everything, just walked out the front door and just went, fuck this. Everything that happened from that point on was totally miraculous. I still ended up owing the bank 125 grand. You know, that was miraculous too. That was a lot of money in the, you know, in the 90s. But it's like that whole, you know, it's like that whole, imagine the scene of, you've all seen Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, I guess, the story of St. Francis, where he just throws everything out the window, all his father's beautiful silks and brocades and stuff out the window into the street, and all of the peasants are picking up the stuff, and his father's having a conniption, like, what are you doing, my son? And then he throws off all his clothes and he figures he's suffering from PTSD from the war, you know, and then he just walks out into the village naked and says, goodbye. And just like, what? That's got to be my state of mind everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. No attachment, no concern how I think it's going to look, no, nothing. Just completely open-minded, open to be used. As ridiculous as I think that might be, and if I do think it's ridiculous, it's only because I'm trying to defend a false sense of myself. I mean, nowadays, if you walked out naked into the street, you'd be arrested for sure, but you'd probably end up in D ward anyway. But mentally, as a concept, as an idea, as a reference point, pre-revelation, it's something you can't deny. That's a powerful image. It's a powerful point of reference. To be that free of attachment, to be that free of judgment and condemnation and free of any idea how you think anything can look. You can't get any less connected to how you think things are going to look than to have no connection at all. And from that point, you're born again. From that point, you start again. Now, there's no need to throw off your clothes or anything, but the idea of that as a mental activity. Here I am, Lord, use me. And it's literally whatever. Whatever it takes. When you realize that death is the alternative to whatever it takes, and that you just end up back here to do this again, then whatever it takes begins to have a lot more relevance and a lot more credence in your experience. It's like, holy fuck, I don't give a shit. I don't give a fuck what the hell I have to do if I've got to walk on broken glass or hot coals or whatever. It's like Jesus says in the Bible, if a limb offends you, cut it off, because it's better for your whole body to, it's better for one limb to be without that than your whole body to burn in the fires of hell. Or Gehenna, which was where they burned all the bodies in Jerusalem. So there's always, like, the only thing I can ever do, the only true representation on earth I can ever represent as a teacher is the importance of mind training. And that's it. I can't represent my revelation because it was personal. I can't represent my own particular journey. I can talk about it, and maybe you'll have an affinity with it somehow, and we can come to this kind of accord that, yeah, we're talking about the same thing, but it's got to be your own experience. You've got to have your own experience. The experience that Jesus wants you to have is the eternal one, which he says is not only possible, but necessary. It's necessary. So my emphasis in all my teachings is always on bringing about a recognition somewhere in the mind of purpose that through miracle-mindedness, I will become revelation ready. I need to walk in faith, to believe and trust in faith. And that faith accompanies you through absolutely every little particular of daily life. Sometimes so much so you won't even recognize it, and you'll look back and you'll realize, wow, I haven't had any problems for ages. I don't even know what a problem is. I couldn't even tell you what a problem is. You give me an example of a problem, I'd be, really? That's just an opportunity to love. That's just an opportunity to love. It's actually a blessing. The thing that you see as a problem, that's a blessing. It's like, wow, I wish I had one of those things you call a problem. I remember them. I remember being so perplexed by problems. How am I going to have enough money? And how am I going to do this? And how am I going to do that? And it's just like, it seemed to be never ending. And then, learning to say, fuck it. It's like simply just that. It's the greatest spiritual teaching of all time. Fuck it. I can't do a damn thing about it. Fuck it. Whatever's going to happen, I'm just going to have to let it happen anyway. It's like people who are faced with the diagnosis of a terminal illness and there's no way for a cure. So what are you going to do? You're going to worry about it until you die? You're just going to say, fuck it. That's the same activity of mind in everything in life. Fuck it. It's hard work trying to control shit. Fuck it. I'm just going to cross the street and talk to that person. Fuck it. I feel a bit of resistance. I know I've got to, but fuck it. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to get on a plane and fly to Australia and go and ride on the back of a crocodile. Fuck it. Everything's going to kill me. Fuck it. It's good. It's like you have to die. What's that line in the New Testament? Jesus says, unless you die, you cannot be reborn or something. Or I've got the book somewhere.
Dying daily.
Oh, St. Paul, I die daily. Yeah, well, that's just like every day, like every day, let me be useful, Lord. It's like chipping away at that ego. That unless a man be reborn of the spirit or something, dies to his old life, he shall not see eternal life. I don't know. The word, it's in my head, but I can't. It's like this is literally the ego death. and you can call it a death, it's really more of an ego reinterpretation. You got to remember that ego, that part of the mind, because everything is God, inclusive of ego, inclusive of the dream, but because the dream is maintained separately of the whole purpose of the course is to bring about the reinterpretation of defense mechanisms, so that even on earth, as above in heaven, let's say, or as in eternity, on earth, you're able to learn how to perceive the whole rather than seeing yourself separate from everyone and everything. And that's when shit really gets real. In my workplace, in my relationships, it's like, damn, I'm not separate from anyone or anything here. All my responses and all my activity in the past has been about how to get the best out of this situation by trying to manipulate my position within it and demand whatever I think is mine in relationship to it. And now all of a sudden, I'm not separate from anything and anyone on it. All I've been doing is trying to manipulate myself to a better position in my own tomb, in my own grave. It's kind of funny. It's like people that go to the cemetery to pick out a plot, you know. It's like, oh no, I don't like that one. I like the one over there near the elm tree. It's like, what the hell difference? It's a hole in the ground. You're not going to know anything about it. But that's literally what the mind does, you know. That's what people does. People mind is just like, how do I get the best out of this? And, you know, like keeping me separate from them, even picking out my own plot at the cemetery. It's like, let me go to the cemetery and pick out my plot. I'll have the one by the gate, the noisy one where all the cars drive in and out, so someone else doesn't have to have that plot, right? Have a little selflessness even in those final moments, maybe. So let me take responsibility for this shit in the streets so that my brothers don't have to deal with it anymore. Yeah. That would be an incredible... it's like in India, you know, like in India, they have 3 in Varanasi, where all the sadhus hang out. They have 3 sewage treatment plants, right?
Yeah,
and they
Varanasi.
Varanasi, yeah, they go through whatever process in the treatment plant they go through, and then they get pumped out into the Ganga, right, into the river after that. It's like, well, the process of breaking down feces in a treatment plant is just to aerate it so that the bacteria in it tends to become overly exaggerated and eat away all of the binding and microorganisms that actually make it feces. It still stinks. They just basically liquefy it. And they pour it into the holiest river. It's their holiest icon, you know, Mother Ganga. And it's just full of like liquid shit. And there's been a lot of activity in the last decade, I know, to try and stop that and to come up with a solution. I don't know whether there has been or not, but it's just a funny thing, I think. But
then they bathe in it.
Yeah, they bathe in it. They drink it. What the fuck? They drink it. Like, talk about a boost to the immune system. You get so sick so often, eventually nothing else can make you sick. So, I mean, the levels of cholera must be through the roof. But what an opportunity for healing, you know. Like I remember going to many years ago, going to mosques and temples and churches and all sorts of different places that were considered to be, in my country, there's not many. I mean, there's a lot of Aboriginal ones, you know, but considered to be sacred sites and things like that, looking for some kind of feeling or connection with holiness, some kind of connection with God or truth or higher reality. Not realizing that it was within, what I was looking for was within me all this time. Oh, I've got a message there. Oh, response video. What's that, Tina? Response video.
You were, gosh, you just now getting it? You were talking about who am I? That's your response video.
Oh, right, okay.
You were talking about, just in reference.
Yeah, if you want to watch it. Oh, yeah, that was... Talk about getting sidetracked. That was what I was going to talk about, the wacky stick. So, but I mean, what an opportunity, you know, like in the Western world, we tend to have this cockeyed view of spirituality where somebody sent me this. It's funny. Who's the guy that enlightenment the damnedest thing? Is that Jed McKenna? And Jed, there's Anna. I think it's Jed McKenna has a book out. It was his first book called Enlightenment, the Damnedest Thing. So Jed's a contemporary American. He doesn't really teach. He's not a Course in Miracles guy. He's more of an Advaita guy. But his house is always open. He has a devotee of Krishna, this woman, I forget her name. She runs the house, right? She's like the house mother. All the new students that come in and out of the house and whatever have to go through her. She vets them all and gives them a room and tells them what the deal is. Jed travels the world and doing little workshops and seminars. He gets invited everywhere and stuff. And when he comes home, they always have these big dinners and stuff. And, you know, for his students that are there specifically for him, they come and live there for a while. I don't know. But he's just so unspiritual. It's like, you know, he makes me look like Amici, but he's just like whatever. And some of his stories about, you know, like he gets invited to these things where he'll go for a dinner, right? Let's say in like Mount Shasta, or there's one of these stories about him. He got invited to this place, some ranch where everybody's a devotee of, what's his name? The guy with the dreadlocks, Muji, and all these other things. Muji's not there, of course, but devotee of Muji, or one of those sort of guys that come from that lineage, you know, from Papaji and everything. And they're all in white. They're all wearing white and they're all in the thing. And that's the Western sort of concept of that devotional sense of being or belonging, and is to present yourself in a certain way. And it's like Jesus only says, just come as you are. You don't have to be anything other than you are. Come to me with all your lumps and your bumps and your illnesses and everything. And it's like, man, that's exactly the kind of teacher I want. That's exactly the whole thing that this is about, you know. I mean, fuck, my teacher Ted used to be in the mafia in New York. There's going to be nobody wearing white at his dinner table. They're all in, you know, they've got the Tommy guns in the back there and whatever. That's my idea of the mafia. He used to be a drug dealer for the mafia. And Jesus literally appeared to him in the gutter one day and said, I want you to help me save the world. You know, it's like, it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. I had someone send me and I'm not saying this to shit on from a great height on other things, because everyone's at where they're at, but it's like, just so you can become aware, I guess, of your own mind, your own, you know, because I'm always looking at my falsity. I'm always looking at how it is the ego wants to dress me up as something. I mean, people are always telling me to put on a fucking shirt. What's with that? What sort of shirt would you have me put on? You know,
I thought you were wearing a shirt.
What's that, Shannon?
I said I thought you were wearing a shirt.
Yeah, exactly. It's a shirt. You know, won't you take your shirt off? That's going to be my common response.
I was gonna comment on that. I was waiting for you though. So
right.
I wanted to.
There was another one the other day. I did this video that I thought was kind of cool. I thought that works. I'll put it up on my YouTube. And the only comment I got was from somebody going, "You should put a shirt on."
I think it's the same person. I think that's just what they.
Oh, is it?
I don't know. I'm gonna check it, but the
I don't know who the hell.
Like big video, and that's really.
I have people in my thing tell me to put a shirt on. I mean, one video I did go and put a shirt on just for the people that tell me to put a shirt on. It's like, what the hell? I realize that there are people that walk around in their house where they're by themselves and they're fully clothed. It's like, really? You do that? You walk around with clothes on in your own house where no one can see you? It's like, so anyway, it's a little different in our Zoom meetings because don't want anything to poke you in the eye. But I had somebody sent me a clip of. So I get some funny stuff sometimes. I don't know, like I'm not up with all the latest healing things, like there's, those bowls and you rub them and they make a beep and it's a tone and a vibrational healing and it's supposed to do something. Well, maybe it does something, but it's instantly corrupted by the mind that's trying to interpret what that is, which is why mind training is more important than sitting around a bunch of bowls. But the idea is there. But I got sent a little clip. It was like a promotional clip for some place, I think it's in the Blue Mountains, which is in Australia, south of here. Beautiful part of our country. Of some retreat thing that had opened, and it opened up with this woman wearing like a caftan thing, walking past the camera and looking out at the view and this whole thing. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it a crack. And then there's a guy all dressed in white at the end of a big hall playing a timber flute, one of those, and he's wearing the beads and the whole thing. I'm like, this is still, to me, that's the same thing as the shit in the streets in San Francisco. It's like, it's all like the whole thing is all illusion, all make believe, all making it up what we think it ought to look like as we go along, and the whole teaching, it doesn't matter how spiritualized you want to make it. The ego is always going to turn it into something like that. And you got to be vigilant for that in your own sense of yourself, because I like the modern term that's getting around about being authentic. Being authentic is finding yourself exactly where you are, like as you are. It's like, yeah, I'm all fucked up. I'm all fucked up. I'm a total mess. The only reason that I'm taking on board this mantle of being, let's say, a spiritual teacher or anything is for my own healing. It's like in the process of these Zoom meetings, in the process of all the workshops that I used to do and all these sorts of things, the amount of relevant opportunities that show up for forgiveness is incredible. And you guys will find that out when you do your own things. You'll be called out on stuff. I remember I went to Tilba and was doing workshops there, and I had this confrontation with this Buddhist nun in one of the local cafes or whatever. I didn't know she was a Buddhist nun. She came to the workshop the next day with her robe and everything, and I recognized this woman who'd called me out on being a fraud and the whole thing, and I'm like, oh my fucking God, like she's a Buddhist nun. And I ended up getting a little part-time job there, gardening for one of the other Buddhists, that was part of this association of Buddhist people. And it's all fraudulent. I'm representing myself totally fraudulently all the time. The only thing I can represent with any degree of truthfulness, and whether anyone believes it or not is no concern, but is the nature of the revelation that I had, which showed me that the Father and the Son are one, and that there is one loving God, and you're all an equal whole and part of that, and you have really nothing to say about it. Everything else is a coming to. Everything else is a preparing for, which is why you're learning to become revelation ready. So learning to take on board that mantle of being miracle-minded, learning to take on board that mantle of God goes with me everywhere I go is important in that process. And each of you will take that on board as according to how important it is for you. I can only sit here and tell you it's the most important thing. Whether you believe me about that or not is that's up to you. It's the most important thing. Everything else is a 6-foot hole in a pine box. Literally, I'm representing God on earth. But to do that, I've got to be able to see what it is that I've made of my world and laugh at it. Right? That laughter is the healing. That laughter, it's like in that clip that I just played you before of Ellen, and she said I was laughing at whatever was going on, and they told her to be quiet. I would ask why everybody else isn't laughing. It's like it's pretty funny, So, Oh, where is Fran? Oh, is she gone?
Her power went out, but I dropped the live, so she might be watching it. She might be. I dropped the live in the chat, so she might be watching it. So if you want to say
I had
something
a
to
thing for Fran with lesson 23, I think it was. Doesn't matter.
her. Let me see if
Bernadette's
she's
going to
watching.
read it. Bernadette's going to read lesson 23 anyway. So next week, I think we'll do. I was going to do some wacky stick stuff this week, but I think we'll do it next week. This week, I really want to try and focus on. I mean, it seems to be the topic of focus anyway. Focus on how important it is to be carrying the constancy of the realization of your purpose with you wherever you go. You know, so that you do make those connections, so that you do understand why you're in any particular place at any one given time. It's easy to think that maybe you're not there for that reason, but it's just as easy to think that you are. You know, it's like Einstein. Everything's either a miracle or everything's either not a miracle. It's not a bit of both. It's one or the other. And you're the one that has to decide what it is. It's like I'm here to represent God. Just that. Just representing the divine creator of all that is. No biggie. But if I decide how I think that representation is going to look, I'm screwed because I'm just a vessel. Use me, Lord. Use me. Here I am. Use me. But it's got to be abiding. It has to be authentic. It's got to be an abiding kind of principle that lodges in the mind somewhere with that relationship with the Holy Spirit and goes before you everywhere you go. So when you arrive there, it'll be like, aha, of course, this is why I'm here. Atonement, and then the offering of whatever it is that the surrender of the previous meaning overlaid on that particular situation will bring. And there's always going to be that particular meaning. I'm never anywhere without that I've already given it a meaning because I'm seeing what's already in the past. Does that make sense? I see only the past. What I'm seeing, I've already given a meaning to it. It doesn't matter where I go. I'm walking into something to which I've already given it a meaning because I wrote the script for it. Now I have a new recognition that I'm walking into that place with a new meaning, not of my own making, and I can allow that to be written upon it for me if I'm willing to surrender the old meaning, which if I don't defend myself with a spiritual premise, can be revealed. So I'll just walk in there defenseless, willing to be used. Use me, Father. All right, Bernadette, let's have it. A word from our sponsor. It's funny. You got to laugh. You got to, laughter. The whole thing's funny, isn't it, Kevin? Kevin'd be great at playing poker. Look, he's got the poker face down pat. If we ever go play Texas Hold'em together, Kevin, you're on my team, okay? We'll just work together. Fran's got good face like that too, poker face. I'm sure there's a clip. Kevin's got his clipboard there. All right, let's do it. 26.
I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. The idea for today contains the only way out of fear that will ever succeed.
The only way. It's the only way out of fear. This is Jesus. Jesus wrote this. It's the only way. Do it again.
I can escape from the thought. I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. The idea for today contains the only way out of fear that will ever succeed. Nothing else will work. Everything else is meaningless. But this way cannot fail. Every thought you have makes up some segment of the world you see.
Every thought.
It is with your thoughts then that we must work. If your perception of the world is to be changed. If the cause of the world you see is attack thoughts, you must learn that it is these thoughts which you do not want. There is no point in lamenting the world. There is no point in trying to change the world. It is inescapable of change because it is merely an as effect. But there is indeed a point in changing your thoughts about the world. Here, you are changing the cause. The effects will change automatically. The world you see is a vengeful world. And everything in it is a symbol of vengeance. Each of your perceptions of external reality is a picture or representation of your own attack thoughts. Oh. One can well ask if this can be called seeing. Is not fantasy a better word for such a process? And hallucination is more appropriate term for the results. You see the world that you have made, but you do not see yourself as the image maker. You cannot be saved from the world, but you can escape from its cause. This is what salvation means. For where is the world you see when its cause is gone? Vision already holds a replacement for everything you think you see now. Loveliness can light your images and so transform them that you will love them, even though they were made of hate. For you will not be making them alone. The idea for today introduces the thought that you are not trapped in the world you see, because its cause can be changed. This change requires first that the cause be identified and then let go, so that it can be replaced. The first two steps in this process requires your cooperation. The final one does not. Your images have already been replaced. By taking the first steps, you will see that this is so. Besides using it throughout the day, as the need arises, 5 practice periods are required in applying today's idea. As you look about, repeat the idea slowly to yourself first. And then close your eyes and devote about a minute to searching your mind for as many attack thoughts as occur to you. As each one crosses your mind, say, I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts about ... Hold each attack thought in your mind as you say this, and then dismiss the thought and go on to the next. In the practice periods, be sure to include both your thoughts of attacking and of being attacked. Their effects are exactly the same because they are exactly the same. You do not recognize this as yet, and you are asked at this time only to treat them as the same in today's practice period. We are
good.
still at the...
That'll do.
Okay.
See how Jesus knows you better than you know yourself? He tells you don't even recognize this as yet. He's fully aware of the human condition. The human condition is completely ignorant of its own state. It's like I'm just charging around like a bull in a china shop, making judgments about everything. And, you know, when I do find a true spiritual teaching, I try to gloss everything up with my spiritual teachings. I try to make everything spiritual. And it's like, as a replacement to what I've made, exactly. But it's still within the dream. It's still within the framework of everything that seems to be going on here. Nothing has actually changed other than I've put lipstick on a skeleton. You know, it's bizarre. It's a bizarre thing. And it takes quite an amount of learning. It takes quite a maturity of learning to realize that there is a necessity to constantly looking at what the hell I'm doing in my own mind. It's like when he reads these lessons and he says, you don't recognize this necessarily as yet. It's like, is he talking to me personally when he says that? Or do I think maybe someone else who bought the book, maybe he means that for them? You know, it's like, no, he's talking to me. He's talking to me. If I can't find it that he's talking to me, I need to be still and just to sit with it for a minute. It's like, holy shit, he's telling me I don't really even know what the hell I'm doing. If you could take the timeline of your experience so far on Earth and have a look at the particular situations that have played out in it, you'd see clearly you have no clue what you're doing. It's always that I take the circuitous route, you know, the shortest point between two things is a straight line, but I always tend to go at it like this, manipulating and smashing and destroying and controlling and trying to override everything and get my way. And it's like all the energy that it takes to do that, I could have just gone whoop, to get to 2 points miraculously. But I sit here in my little brain box thing with my pointy brain trying to work it out, thinking that one of my thoughts is somehow better or loftier than another. It's like none of my thoughts mean anything. Not one of them. It's like when you realize that, it's like, holy crap, my thoughts don't mean a damn thing. I'm not going to use them to try and navigate my experience. I'm going to let it be miraculous because I realize that I have actually no clue. And that's a joyous thing. To the ego, it's going to be a humbling of pride, perhaps, but to the true self that is like desperate for change and desperate for an alternative, it's going to come as good news. It's like, oh, thank God, I don't have to do that anymore. I can just lay all that burden of trying to manage and cope and organize and just trust that whatever it's meant to be, it'll be. And the door of opportunity will open. All I got to do is say yes and walk through it. Because there is no lack in God. There is no void. There is no thing that I think should happen that doesn't happen. Because my will and the will of God are one. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have to cross the street and put yourself out to go and say hi to someone or do anything along those lines, you know, because you are useful to the atonement. In your willingness to be useful, you are entirely useful. But it's the vacillation between being useful and then forgetting your purpose, which renders you unuseful, that the mind training is here to correct. Anybody that can see reasonably, I would rather choose love over fear, has already made the right decision. But it's like learning to apply that decision in a place where everything's always changing. The landscape always seems to be presenting something different, through realizing that it's actually the same thing. It's actually all not true. That's where you get to. And it's easy to think that the course is here to help you have a better life in the world. That's not why it's here. That's not why you're doing it. It's not about being more successful or manifesting more bounty or what is it, abundance that everybody talks about. The abundance is of the grace of God. That's the abundance you want. Nothing else. From that, everything else flows. Isn't that right, Anna? Anna, who's starting to live now from the grace of God, from that abundance, from that realization, and is starting to actually begin to appreciate that work that she's been putting in for herself by the results that she's getting back. I mean, look at her smiling and laughing there, and like, you know, you go back 12 months and look at a picture of her. What a wreck. It's like, that's not the Anna that I once knew or once tried to hold to a fixed image of denial in my own mind. It's like it's a liberated version of myself presented through an Anna. It's like, thank you, Father. Thank you, Jesus. It's like, fuck yeah. All right, Tina, lesson 29, please. We're going to do a couple of lessons, and then I want to do a little bit of breathing. I'm just going to just before you read that, I'm just going to get a drink of water. All right, go for it. 29.
Cool.
Take a breath. This is the star on the Christmas tree. You ready? Oh. Yes. Another one. Ready?
Ay.
Yeah. Joyce. Good.
Oh. God is in everything I see. God is in everything I see. The idea for today explains why you can see all purpose in everything. It explains why nothing is separate by itself or in itself.
Right, stop. That's exactly the whole thing we're talking about, yes? All right, good. Which is why everywhere you go and in every situation, you are purposeful. You are purposeful everywhere for that reason.
And
there's always
and it explains why nothing you see means anything. In fact, It explains every idea we have used thus far and all subsequent ones as well. Today's idea is the whole basis for vision. You will probably find this idea very difficult to grasp at this point. You may find it silly, irreverent, senseless, funny, and even objectionable. Certainly, God is not in a table, for example, as you see it. Yet we emphasized yesterday that a table shares the purpose of the universe. And what shares the purpose of the universe shares the purpose of its creator. Try then today to begin to learn how to look on all things with love, appreciation, and open-mindedness. You do not see them now. Would you know what it is in them? Nothing is as it appears to you. Its holy purpose
Nothing.
is as it appears to you. Its holy purpose stands beyond your little range. When vision has shown you
Go on.
the holiness that lights up the world, you will understand today's idea perfectly. And you will not understand how you could ever have found it difficult.
Yes.
um, our 6 2-minute practice periods for today should follow a now familiar pattern.
Right, that'll do.
Thank you.
Everything is purposeful. Everything. Lesson 62, Joe. In the big book, 62. It's like the whole realization, the recognition of my purpose is an all-abiding state of mind. My purpose is love. Love. That's it. Can this be hard to learn by anyone who wants it to be true? It's love. Oh, Tina, can you reach out to Megan? She sent me a thing saying no satsang. Hang on. I'll reach out to her. Maybe
you got it?
Can you send her the link? Maybe she's on
Right
the wrong
now? Okay. Yeah.
Her daughter's going through a thing. She wanted me to say something about that. All right, 62.
Forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. It is your forgiveness that will bring the world of darkness to the light. It is your forgiveness that lets you recognize the light in which you see. Forgiveness is the demonstration that you are the light of the world. Through your forgiveness does the truth about yourself return to your memory. Therefore, in your forgiveness lies your salvation. Illusions about yourself and the world are one. That is why all forgiveness is a gift to yourself. Your goal is to find out who you are. Having deemed your identity by attacking creation and its creator, now you are learning how to remember the truth. For this attack must be replaced by forgiveness, so that thoughts of life may replace thoughts of death. Remember that in every attack you call upon your own weaknesses, while every time you forgive, you call upon the strength of Christ within you. Do you not then begin to understand what forgiveness will do for you? It will remove all sense of weakness, strain, and fatigue from your mind. It will take away all fear and guilt and pain. It will restore the invulnerability and power God gave his Son to your awareness. Let us be glad to begin and end this day by practicing today's idea and use it as frequently as possible throughout the day. It will help make the day as happy for you as God wants you to be. And it will help those around you as well as those who seem to be far away in space and time to share this happiness with you. As often as you can, closing your eyes if possible, say to yourself, forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. I would fulfill my function that I may be happy.
Good. Megan, howdy. Did you see the post I put up for this Zoom meeting on my page, the little picture? Mary Mag there doing the fingers. I can't remember I don't know how to do that, all those fingers.
It was bloods. She did the blood.
Yeah, the blood.
Blood of the lamb.
I don't even know what,
Well,
I have a friend.
She's a
I have
nun,
a
blood of
friend,
the lamb. But yeah.
I have a friend who is always on about pleading the blood. And I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean, pleading the blood? Leanne, hello. So when I put that picture up, Megan, I thought this looks like Megan. It's like Mary Mag there, with her fingers doing whatever. I don't know how you do that, but I thought this picture looks just like Megan. So
I was looking everywhere. I came in through an old Zoom link or an old post.
okay. I thought you wouldn't miss the reference, but it doesn't matter. Tom, lesson 70, please. You got the big book. Everyone else just listen.
I don't have the book on me.
What? What kind of a Course in Miracles student are you?
I can get it. Hold on. Let me bring it up. Lesson 70?
Lesson 70.
Okay.
I don't actually have one on me either. So I've got about 6 boxfuls of them out in the hallway, but I don't have one in my possession. If anybody wants the sparkly book, by the way, just let me know.
All right, I got it.
All right, lesson 70. Let's have it.
Lesson 70. My salvation comes from me. All temptation is nothing more than some form of the basic temptation not to believe the idea for today. Salvation seems to come from anywhere except from you. So too does the source of guilt. You see neither guilt nor salvation as in your own mind and nowhere else. When you realize that all guilt is solely an invention of your mind, you also realize that guilt and salvation must be in the same place. And understanding this, you are saved. The seeming cost of accepting today's idea is this. It means that nothing outside yourself can save you. Nothing outside yourself can give you peace. But it also means that nothing outside yourself can hurt you, or disturb your peace, or upset you in any way. Today's idea places you in charge of the universe, where you belong because of what you are. This is not a role that can be partially accepted. and you must surely begin to see that accepting it is salvation. It may not, however, be clear to you why the recognition that guilt is in your own mind entails the realization that salvation is there as well. God would not have put the remedy for the sickness where it cannot help. That is the way your mind has worked, but hardly his. He wants you to be healed, so he has kept the source of healing where the need for healing lies. You have tried to do just the opposite, making every attempt, however distorted and fantastic it might be, to separate healing from the sickness for which it was intended, and thus keep the sickness. Your purpose was to ensure that healing did not occur. God's purpose was to ensure that it did. Today we practice realizing that God's will and ours are really the same in this.
All right,
God wants us to... Go ahead.
That's good. So, Tina and Anna, when you do your during the week thing, the first 50 and stuff like that, can you invite Tom in for that?
Yes.
And I'll tell you what. And then, of course, anyone else that might want to join. Hey, Kevin's out of bed. Oh, it's a miracle. Anyway.
Tom,
Wait.
I'm gonna send you a message. I'll send you a message.
Send Tom a message. He's not quite out of bed. When Kevin's totally out of bed, then that's the continuum's finished. We're just... Did you ever read a book, Kev, called Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, where they did everything in the bed? Like they would fly around in their bed and like have these amazing adventures. The bed would take them everywhere they go. It's like a children's book.
Saw the movie.
Oh, did you? The movie. I had the book when I was young. I thought that was an incredible thing. Imagine if you could just live in bed and just like the idea of a magic carpet. So the reading of these lessons, there's a line in the course where Jesus says, I'm aware of the revelation readiness of all my brothers everywhere. Right? In all these years I've been doing this, I've got a sense of that. I've got a sense of, and this is only, like I can only say this. I mean, you guys will know about it when it's your turn to know about it, and maybe you've already had experiences of things like this, but the most prominent experience of knowing of the revelation readiness, because you are the Holy Spirit, right? You are the Spirit of wholeness. It is within you, and it's intrinsic. It's your being. The most vivid, I guess, and in your face, because it was also emotionally loaded, I suppose, but that I have of this reference is when my wife left me, when she walked out the door for the very last time, and every fiber of my being knew that she was running from revelation. It was nothing to do with me. It was nothing to do with any of the situations of living or anything like that, because every situation is purposeful. Every situation has a higher resonance to it, a higher vibratory association attached to it, because God does go with you wherever you go, right? When she left, and this is a thing when couples have been together for a long time, like they can finish each other's sentences and they sort of have this kind of thing that doesn't need to be spoken about, and they just sort of know each other's likes and dislikes and whatever. So over the 15 years or whatever we were together, 16 years we were married, we became very familiar with each other's patterns, even to the point of she would know things about me that I didn't recognize in myself. And we would sometimes have these little heart-to-heart moments going, hey, hang on a minute, let's talk about something. And, you know, and it would always be fruitful. It would always be beneficial. And like, because healing was our purpose, right? We were together for healing right from the start. But when she left, I felt this overpowering sense. It was just, I almost wanted to grab her, but I knew she had the free will, right? So I almost wanted to grab her and pull her back through the door and go, just wait for a second. Before you get in the car and go, just wait for one more moment. Because I knew that something was about to happen. Something big, right? And just to continue using her as a reference, and this goes to energy or vibration or whatever. whatever, and you'll become more attuned to the subtle frequencies through your own process. She went through a period, and I hope she doesn't mind me talking about her thing. She's kind of personal, but I won't mention her name. She went through a period of, as we all probably do, of looking at a lot of Eastern teachings and teachings about Krishna and all this sort of stuff, you know, and the Gitas and Upanishads and stuff, and had to go to India, right? There was this whole thing about she had to go to India, didn't know why. It was part of her script, part of her story. I knew in my own mind, there's no need to go to India because India is within you. Whatever you think you're going to find in India already exists in your own conscious association with yourself, in denial of the fact of time and space that tells you that it's over there and not within. And we argued about that for a long time. It's like, you don't need to go to India, I would say. And she'd go, no, I have to go. I just have to go. And in my own mind, I'm thinking, well, you could collapse time by doing the whole India thing now miraculously as a moment of honest prayer and being still with that. And we would bicker about it and go backwards and forwards as all couples do, I guess. Anyway, but I knew she was on the cusp of having some kind of profound spiritual experience because she'd been doing all this work. I just knew it. I don't know how I knew it. I just knew it. I was aware of it. I was aware of this kind of readiness for something going on in her. And as a vibration, she wasn't aware of it, but as a vibration, I was aware of it. And I knew, and I tried to tell her that whatever's going to happen there can happen here because Jesus is in charge of it. And it doesn't depend on time and space. She didn't believe me. She had to go to India. Anyway, so she went to India and she sat by some lake somewhere near Goa and had a very profound spiritual experience where the whole world turned to a lake of gold and everything became golden light and the whole thing. But it took time and space for that to occur, right? Admittedly, only about a month, which in the grand scheme of spiritual experiences, if you've ever been familiar with anyone's particular journeys, some people spend 20 or 30 years trying to have a profound experience, right? But so a month or something isn't very much. But there's a vibration, right? Because love is a vibration. Truth is a vibration. It's like when we began this Zoom meeting, it's like I was talking about how you recognize it in others. And you just know that you have this connection that you have to make because you feel a certain vibration about it. You feel a certain way about it. And initially you're going to feel that as a kind of a prompt or a kind of a, I don't know why, but I got to go and talk to this person, or I don't know why, but I just got to buy this book, or whatever it is, right? But you feel it. It's not about words. It's not about concepts. You feel it. You feel it within yourself. All feeling is a vibration. The corruption of that, of course, is the corruption of the miracle impulse, where Jesus talks about whatever impulse you get, which is divine, the miracle impulse that you get is divine, is always going to be corrupted by your ego, which is why you need mind training in order to be able to recognize the corruption on one hand and be able to offer it up for healing on the second hand, so that the corruption can, so that impulse can be used in you for your own benefit, for your own healing. Right? When you guys read this book, when you read these lessons, the vibration of your reading, right? When you read the lesson, there's a harmonic, right? There's an expression of it. And that expression changes as you mature in your mind training, as you mature through the process of healing and through the idea of forgiveness. You come into a more of an alignment with the Christ-minded truth of yourself, or the Buddha-minded truth of yourself, however you want to express that. It doesn't really matter, right? It's a truth of yourself that is not of the world. It's divine. You become more and more into alignment with it, and you start to recognize it within yourself. You realize your life's becoming more peaceful, you're having less problems, that your relationships are all tending to become resolved, and things that once disturbed you don't disturb you. Your vibration is raising up. You're becoming happier within yourself for no reason. Sure, there's still going to be moments of work to do where you realize, oh man, I'm in the shit. I need help. You know, and that's kind of like this roller coaster of up and down, and that can go on for quite some time. But in general, as you make conscious and deliberate and devoted choices regarding the purpose of your life in the situations that it's given you to look at, you begin to make progress towards that direction. You begin to make advance towards becoming more peaceful within yourself. And you will recognize it. Right? That might be accompanied by experiences of phenomena and miraculous things happening, hearing the voice and all sorts of stuff. And that's great if that happens. You might have, like Jesus talks about it, as you might have periods of clairvoyancy or seeing, or all sorts of stuff goes on, and healing and whatever. That's great too. I know people, all that stuff's happened, including me. But in general, the vibration that you give off, the vibration through your expression of your truth, or expression of yourself, is something that matures. Just as you see it in the nature of your own life when you enter into this, let's say at the very bottom of your experience, which most people come to it through, like, my life is so crap, I'll do anything, I just want an alternative. And then suddenly it just appears like there's no lack in God, the nature abhors, the universe abhors a vacuum. Something comes along that offers you a lifeline, right? If you're an alcoholic, that might be Alcoholics Anonymous, or, or a doctor, or whatever it is. That it operates on all levels. So when you're reading these lessons, there's a fluency, there's an ease. As you become more naturally attuned to your truth, everything begins to flow more seamlessly and more peacefully and more beautifully. And you realize that you're changing. As you go through certain changes within yourself, and you can call those shifts in consciousness if you like, as you go through certain changes in yourself, you often come up against these flat spots where it's like, it seems like nothing's going on now. How come my spiritual progress was really good at the beginning? Lots of stuff was happening. I was having all these confrontations and healing moments and doing all this work on myself. And it's like, well, eventually all of that stops, because you do become more peaceful. But you become more peaceful for a purpose. Your vibration reaches a kind of a crescendo for a purpose, because in time and space, you can only go so far, right? The acceptance of atonement is as far as you can go here. Beyond that, it's not up to you anymore. Your participation is no longer required, right? When Jesus says, I'm aware of the revelation readiness of all my brothers everywhere, that means that he's in charge of that, not you. Right? So everything that occurs from that point on, it's about maintaining that or mastering that sense of self, that sense of inner peace, and being able to carry it with you as an emanating force on earth. From that point, revelation comes to you. Your vibration literally reaches out around the universe, and I hope to do this in time and space. There's no way I can sort of express this otherwise, but let's say it reaches out as, when you throw a rock in a pond and you get a ripple, it goes out. Your emanation, your declaration of your truth, your living of your truth emanates out, right out through time and space, beyond the stars, beyond the universe, to the very limits of time and space itself. And then it comes back to you. Then it comes back to you as a ripple in a pond. It comes back to the center. When it comes back, it's imbued with the full definition of the nature of the parameters through which it was contained. Does that make sense? The edges of the pond. It's like a bat sending out a sonar signal. When that sonar signal comes flying back, the bat can tell where everything is. It knows there's a tree or an obstacle or whatever. It can't see with its eyes because bats are fundamentally blind. But it tells by what comes back in the ripple of its sonar what is out there, and so it can navigate and go through it. Now, revelation for you is much the same thing. When your signal comes back, right, and you're able to maintain that sense of inner peace for a certain amount of time, you become attuned and you become very, let's say, tuned into the subtle frequencies of your own particular vibration. You will become aware of it when it comes back, and you will understand the nature of your true limitation, which is the edge of your consciousness. Once you understand the edge of your consciousness or the limit of your consciousness, you can train yourself in meditation to sit there at any point. It's like the door in the dome on the Truman Show. Have you guys seen the Truman Show? It's like there's that door. He finally decides to confront his fears, and he discovers a door, which is the limitation of his parameters. He's confined by the dome. He doesn't even know it's a dome. He gets to the very, very edge, and boom, he hits the edge, and he discovers the edge. And then there's a door there. Well, meditation is the same. When you go through your mind training, you're doing all this work, becoming more peaceful, more tuned in, more resonant with the higher association that you're naturally part of anyway. And then it seems to kind of like fall away a bit. And it's like, well, now what do I do? Now you spend more time in listening. Now you spend more time in meditation, which is why in the workbook, the first half is designed, in the Course in Miracles, the first half is designed as the undoing of the way you see now. And the second half of the workbook is designed to instill in you a sense of purpose through attaining the vision of Christ and teaching you how to be still. Like that. Right? Teaching you how to tune into the highest possible frequency. And it's very subtle. You'll just pick up on it. When it comes back to you and you can pick up on it, your mind is at peace and you can be like, what's that? There's something there. And all of a sudden you can feel it. It's like a boundary in your mind. It's like a veil. Jesus talks about it as the veil, right? Or a mist. In the Bible, it says a great mist went up. It seems to be a limitation. Because you can't see beyond it, the ego tells you there is nothing beyond it because it doesn't know what's beyond it. All it knows is time and space, because the domain of time and space is the realm of the ego, right? Beyond that limitation is your liberation, is the portal, if you want to call it a portal, is the doorway, is, knock and you shall enter. It's the point of exit where you transcend the conscious level of your mind, which is purely time and space, to that which is of a higher capacity. And I can't really give it a word because there's no words to describe it, but it's a whole other thing, right? When you push against that fabric, when you push against that veil, when you push against the limits of consciousness, you'll actually realize that you go right through it. I think it's lesson 16 where Jesus says, like, imagine yourself going through the clouds, right? For me, it doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't appear as clouds. It appears as almost like a black gray kind of material sheet, like a covering of something. And when I push against it in my mind, it just gives way. It's nothing at all. There is no limit to God's love. And I find myself entering into light. That's a point in my mind, in my conscious mind, where higher to lower meet, where the Holy Spirit, being of a higher orientation, and the information or the guidance that I receive from the Holy Spirit being useful to me in the lower orientation, come together, and I can actually hear. Right? That's in everybody. But the time will come when you realize, hang on a minute, now I have to be about this. I've cleared away all my obstacles. I've done all this work. I've forgiven the world. What's next? It's like, well, there's not really any need to tell you what's next, because the mind will naturally attune to its highest good if you are purposeful. Which is why the mind training emphasizes purpose in all things, even in the moment where you think that there's nothing going on for you. All right, well, if there's nothing going on for me, let me just simply be still. Let me be sitting silent for a minute and just enter into a moment of listening and feeling and tuning in, right? And I don't know really how to talk about that other than that you will discover it for yourself, what that means to you. You'll feel it. It's a sense. It's a subtle frequency. It's like the higher the frequency gets, the less dense it is, It's like a dog, like a dog can hear a very high pitched thing, but we can't hear it. It's like you're learning to hear something that is not of the world. You're learning to be still and to listen for something that isn't of the gross and domestic kind of orientation. It's higher than that. But you're perfectly attuned to hear it when you clear away all the dross. And that's as far as you can go in the world. Beyond that, you enter into direct light. So when you open your mind, you sit there in meditation, you open your mind like, like that, and you have those moments of flashes of light. Jesus talks about them in the Course as beautiful flashes of light. When you begin to have those beautiful flashes of light, that's as far as you can go. Right? Beyond that, there's simply the laying aside of the body, this laying aside of the vessel, the willingness to give it up and to transcend the physical parameters altogether. Because the you that you think you are as an identity undergoing transformation and pursuing some sort of spiritual liberation doesn't actually exist. Therefore, the you that you think you are can only do whatever you think you're doing within the framework of time and space. It's like you don't wake up here on earth, you wake up in eternity. But I guarantee you, when you have those moments of light, you'll want that more than anything. It's like, man, I had a moment of light. I saw the light in my mind. And I remember the very first time I experienced light in my mind, I was attending a hypnotist. I was very young. I was only about 16 or 17. And I had all these problems going on in my life that I just couldn't deal with as a teenager. And down the road, there was this hypnotist. And I had this idea that I would go to the hypnotist and they could just help me to forget about all my stuff, And through a process of, I guess what I would call now, looking back, a kind of a guided meditative approach, it actually worked for me. And one day, I probably had about 6 or 7 sessions with this particular woman. One day in one of the sessions, I went so deep into a relaxed state that a point of light erupted in my mind, which I'd never seen or experienced before ever. I was like a teenager, right? And when I told her about it, she didn't really know what to make of it. She's like, oh, it wasn't part of her hypnotherapy training, I guess, but it was something that occurred nonetheless. And I did wonder about it for quite a while. It's like, but I didn't have a reference for it. So it's like, what do you do with that? It wasn't until the Course came along where, and Jesus tells you there's actually light in your mind. Seek for it and you'll find it. Look for it where it is. Don't look for it out there. Look for it within yourself. So the vibration that you'll get, it's like some of you guys are now vibrating like Anna and Tina and Bernadette at a much increased pitch or resonance. There's a whole thing going on that you also are aware of within yourselves. Like it's happening. Right? It's a true occurrence. It's a true thing going on. And you're back and forth from it again and again and again and again, which is why the ongoing need for meditation again and again and again and again. Right? Meditation coupled with prayer, coupled with honest searching out for any latent kind of agendas and whatever it is you think, And there's a point, like for me, there was a point where I had to put aside all my interests in Sufism and Hinduism and all of these other things that I sort of came through as a rite of passage to get to A Course in Miracles. And it cleaned up, in a sense, it cleaned up all of my vibration. I stopped trying to refer to past learnings about things to try and correlate what I was reading in the Course. I just realized that whoever had written this Course knows me better than I know myself, and I can just trust that. And things really started to speed up after that, and I don't know how to talk about that other than hold on to your hat. It was pretty full on. So, and it's still full on to this day, like it's still full on. But everything is purposeful. Learning that, being aware of it, and being able to find yourself purposeful in any given situation in which you seem to be is all you can ask. It's like, man, if I'm purposeful in this situation or that situation, then the fruits of my purpose can be given to me and shown to me and revealed to me if I'm about my Father's business there, if I'm engaging with my higher reason for being there in that place, like the girl in the sand dunes. I had no clue she was there, no idea. But because my mind, we just finished like a 4-hour meditation and I had to go for a walk on the beach. I had to get out of the room. It's like, you sit for 4 hours in meditation anywhere. It's like in a room with like 100 other people. It's like, man, that's the power of that. Like I could tell you things, but it's intense. And then you get out of there. It's like, you feel this thing. But the benefit of that meditation goes with you for quite a while until you begin to corrupt it again with your own pointy thinking and stuff. And so walking along the beach, I was vividly aware of the vibratory frequency that I had attained or that I had entered into during that meditative period. It was still with me. I'm like, wow, that was powerful. That was really, I went really deep. I went really far, whatever. I don't know how to talk about it, but, and that vibration harmonizes with everything that shows lack, that shows denial, that shows up in my own dream, my own thinking as needing healing, because everywhere I go, even walking up the beach, it's purposeful. And so when I got that prompt, walk up into the sand dunes, it's like I wasn't intending to walk up into the sand dunes. I was walking along the beach and I was probably going to go to my little coffee nook up the end and get a coffee and just chill out for a bit. But I was prompted and guided to walk into the sand dunes because I was receptive to the higher frequencies of communication that I had entered into and was still carrying with me from the meditation. And there was a young girl cutting her wrists with a knife hidden away in the bushes at the top of the sand dunes. And luckily that situation resolved in a nice way. And, but it's like, for me, that's a very prominent example of that in my own transformation. In you guys' own transformations, you'll probably come to having experiences similar and in your own regards along those lines. So. Shannon, lesson 44, please. And Anna, 212 after that. Before you start reading, take a few deep breaths. Right? Push into this. Push into it. Really connect with the words on the page. Connect with what those symbols represent. You know where you're going with this.
God is the light in which I see. Today, we are continuing with the idea for yesterday, adding another dimension to it. You cannot see in darkness, and you cannot make light. You can make darkness and then think you see in it, but light reflects life and is therefore an aspect of creation. Creation and darkness cannot coexist.
Good.
But light and life must go together, being but different aspects of creation.
See how you're feeling that? All right. Reach into the feeling, not the words. Keep going. Let it affect you. Let it affect you totally, because it's a frequency. It's not about the words. It's a frequency that those words contain. It's a truth within you that you know and you love so much.
In order to see,
Yes.
one must recognize that light is within, not without. You do not see outside yourself, nor is the equipment for seeing outside you. An essential part of this equipment is the light that makes seeing possible. It is with you always, making vision possible in every circumstance.
Every circumstance.
Today, we're going to attempt to reach that light. For that purpose, we will use a form of practice which has been suggested once before and which we will utilize increasingly. It is a particularly difficult form for the undisciplined mind. Because it represents a major goal of mind training. It embodies precisely what the untrained mind lacks. Yet the training must be accomplished if you are to see. Have at least 3 practice periods today, each lasting 3 to 5 minutes. A longer time is highly recommended, but only if you find the time merely slipping by with little or no sense of strain. The form of exercise we will use today is the most natural and easy one in the world for the trained mind, just as it seems to be the most unnatural and difficult for the untrained mind. Your mind is no longer wholly untrained. You are quite ready to learn the form of exercise we will use today, but you may find that you will encounter strong resistance. The reason is very simple. While you practice in this form, you leave behind everything that you now believe and all the thoughts which you have made up. Properly speaking, this is the release from hell. Perceived through the ego's eyes, it is loss of identity and a descent into hell. If you can stand aside from the ego ever so little, you will have no difficulty in recognizing that its opposition and fears are meaningless. You might find it helpful from time to time you might find it helpful to remind yourself from time to time that to reach light is to escape from darkness, whatever you may believe to the contrary. God is the light in which you see. You are attempting to reach him. Begin the practice period by repeating today's idea with your eyes open and close them slowly, repeating the idea several times more. Then try to sink into your mind, letting go every kind of interference and intrusion by quietly sinking past them. Your mind cannot be stopped in this unless you choose to stop it. It is merely taking its natural course. Try to observe your passing thoughts without involvement and slip quietly by them. While no particular form of approach is advocated, what is needful is a sense of the importance of what you are doing. It's an estimable value to you and an awareness that you are attempting something very holy. Salvation is your happiest accomplishment. It is also the only one that has any meaning, because it is the only one that has any use to you at all.
Good. That'll do. Light is in your mind. You'll feel it. You'll sense it before you experience it. Just before you enter into direct experience of light, you will feel its impression upon your mind. You'll feel its call and its pull. You'll feel this kind of whoosh, this kind of being sucked in, this kind of unexplainable activity in your mind that you've never felt before. At first, you're going to want to recoil from it. What the hell's going on? I feel like I'm losing my sanity. I feel like I'm going to be sucked into nothingness. Let it happen. Let yourself be sucked into the abyss, into the void, into the nothingness, because it's not nothingness at all. That's just how it appears on this side of the veil. On the other side, it's light. It's perfection. It's divine. It's beyond all those words that make a mockery of it. It's unspeakable. There is light in your mind, and the purpose of finding it is holy. This is your crusade. This is your holy crusade, if you want to take that up. Jesus talks about it in the Ur text as this is the last crusade. Listen, learn, and do. All right, Anna, let's have it.
All right, so
Tom,
I'm
listen, I want Tom, listen to this with conscious, total focus as much as you can, okay? Not the words. Listen to how it feels in you. All right, Bernadette, the same. Megan, the same.
I'm reading from my phone, so I don't know if you'll see me once I move this screen out of the way.
Doesn't matter. We don't see you now anyway. Yes. Thank you. You're muted.
I am not a body. I am not a body. I am free. For I am still as God created me. Oh, I have a function God would have me fill.
Yes.
I seek the function that would set me free from all the vain illusions of the world. Only the function God has given me can offer me freedom. Only this I seek, and only this will I accept as mine. I am not a body, I am free. For I am still as God created me.
Yes. Yes. Breathe. Close your eyes. Take a slow breath. Slowly in. Slowly out. In through the nose, out through the top of your head. Close your eyes and breathe. Try to let go of all thoughts that come and go. And just sit quietly. Breathing. No need to be doing anything. Nothing left to be done or undone. Just taking this moment. Feel this moment. Connect with how you feel in the body, of the body, not in the body, not of the body perhaps. Whatever you feel, whatever definition you want to place on that feeling, it's fine. And then let the definition go. And just feel. All things are one. What you are feeling is the vibration of your own mind, the vibration of your own experience of yourself. When you feel a certain way, let's say angry, you feel it differently. When you feel confused, you feel it differently. When you feel at peace, you feel it differently. But just feel, breathe, and feel. And try to find your center. Try to find a sense of feeling good about simply being and simply breathing and simply feeling. And just sit with it for a second and wait there. All things serve the greater good. All things, including this. There is nothing that happens by accident, nothing by circumstance. Everything is as it is meant to be, cannot possibly be any other way. Breathe and tune in. It doesn't matter if you think you don't feel anything. That's quite common in the human condition. I often have people tell me they feel like they're an empty husk. They can't feel anything within, devoid of passion, devoid of life, nothing to give. That's pretty normal for the human experience. If you're feeling that way, feel it totally. Let it take you where it needs to go. If you're feeling something else, let it take you where it needs to go. Don't try to adjust to any feeling that you get. Don't try to avoid anything. Let it move you to emotion. Let it move you into a state. Try to stay with it. Your ego is going to want to wriggle and try to get out of it, especially if it feels bad. But this is a journey into fear, not away from it. This is a journey of confrontation and healing. You cannot heal what you are not willing to look at, not willing to face. It's like my own denial, my own reflections. I really need to get in touch with those. It's easy in the moment if somebody confronts you in the street, you have an emotional response or a reaction. It's easy. You can't tell yourself you didn't have that response. But in retrospect, you can play it down and push it aside and pretend it wasn't that bad. But it's still there as an unresolved and latent response, giving rise to a reinforcement of a belief system about yourself wherein you think you are that thing that can be pushed this way or that way rather than part of a whole. So we seek for our blocks and we find them, and every trigger, every button that gets pushed in our human experience, we allow it to be pushed. We welcome it and we're grateful for it. Because if fear still holds a place within me, let me seek it out. Let me find it and heal it, because I no longer have a use for it. No matter what it looks like. A reasonable fear, or perhaps a terrifying one. But we practice with those things that we're aware of, and then we move on to the next thing. We breathe, and we allow it to be there. We feel it. We feel the work. We feel the way. When our eyes are closed, we feel it. When our eyes are open, we are learning to feel it. We are learning to consciously be aware of our purpose throughout the day, in our relationships and our business meetings and our dealings with the people at the supermarket, perhaps, and other things that seem quite superficial. We're learning to be vigilant for our own state of inner peace. And whatever disturbs it, no matter how small, is the subject matter for forgiveness. Feel, keep your eyes closed. Breathe. Yes, Tina, good. If it triggers an emotional response, that's fine. Just remember to invite the Holy Spirit into that equation, to surrender it up to your higher mind for healing. And the process of that healing can look like any kind of emotional release, laughter or crying or whatever. It doesn't matter. Some people vomit and have incredible convulsions. It's just energy. You can call it what you want. God, universal flow, divine source. It doesn't matter what you call it, but it's all the one thing. It's life. It's life, and you are part of that. In your own sphere, you are all of it. A whole within a whole. I in he and he in me. You can't describe it really. You can't put your finger on it because there's nothing to point out in what is everything. It's simply a sense of self, sense of feeling connected, rather than feeling separated and disconnected. Feel. When you walk in the park, Shannon, and you meet somebody in your park, make the effort to talk to them. Make the effort. Go out of your way. Put yourself in the way. When you're practicing your music, Megan, go out of your way to put yourself into an uncomfortable experience of it. Because the healing shows up in the things you're familiar with. It wouldn't be helpful to you if it showed up in ways you couldn't recognize. It shows up right where you are in this moment. There's no quick fix in healing. You have to do the work. We call it the work, but it's really the joy. When you see it rightly, it's really the joy. I'm participating in the resumption of my own joy. I'm participating in the resumption of the journey of my soul. I've been in this cyclical world of illusion for too long, reanimating myself through one thought form and another, again and again and again. Finally, here I am in a place where salvation is offered to me. Salvation from reincarnation. That's what it is from. Salvation from death. It's the same thing. From that framework of thinking that is encapsulated within itself, that perpetuates itself and keeps you in a cloistered field of energetic resonance that seems to has no way out. But even the veil has a resonance. And when you begin to meditate, you begin to feel and you begin to get in touch with those subtle frequencies, you will begin to sense the limit of your consciousness and you'll be able to push against it. For some people, it feels like a falling back and downwards. Some people, it feels like a sense of being lifted up and going forward. It's in a deep meditative state that you'll become more and more acutely aware of those subtle frequencies. If it feels fearful, that's fantastic. You're on the right path. If it feels like it's out of your depth, that's fantastic. It's a journey into fear, not away from it. Fear was the first experience you had of separation. The choice, the decision made. to be separate, to use free will, to begin the experience of the journey of the soul, which was literally terrifying. All you'd ever known since then was the love and the unconditional love of the eternal state. The story of the prodigal son is the story of one who leaves the comforts and the routine of his home and goes out into the world to experience the particulars of the dramas and the problems and everything that the world contains, only to finally come home again, realizing that that's not his true calling. It's not out there. It's in surrendering to the nature of his home, the nature of his true presence, and is welcomed in with open arms, as you will be. Whatever feelings of guilt, whatever feelings of unworthiness you might carry with you, perhaps even yet hidden to yourself, are overlooked entirely. No one is judged for a dream. You are perfect and whole as God created you right now, dreaming this whole scenario, undergoing this awakening process. Breathe. You're a child of God and you have nothing to say about it. Thank you, Father. The world cannot tell you who you are. Breathe. Yes. Yes. Good. All right, we'll leave it at that. And Tina, can we use the room? Megan and I have a little thing we'd like to do for Megan's daughter. So if you guys are all...
Yeah, let me shut everything down.
Yeah, so I'll say goodbye to everybody. And
Okay.
thanks for joining. I hope it's been helpful. Remember, everything is purposeful. That's the heading for today's thing.
All right, perfect.